Quit being the world's best kept secret. Your time is now.
Welcome to the Millionaire Woman Show, where we'll be discussing leadership, business, human potential, inspiring you to live rich from the inside out. Unlock your creativity, stretch out of your comfort zone, break through your barriers, take inspired action, and achieve epic results. Now here's your host, three-time best-selling author, speaker, and certified executive coach, Debra Kasowski.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Millionaire Woman Show podcast, where we bring you guests from around the world that are going to take your life, your business, or your leadership to the next level. Today, I have a special guest. Our paths have crossed at an event, and I'm so grateful to have her on the show. Jackie Rainforth. She's an award-winning sales expert, facilitator, sought-after conference speaker, and she has achieved enormous success as one of the few outstanding professional saleswomen to make it to the top in a male-dominated construction industry. She is the founder and CEO of nationally acclaimed Rainmakers Business Solutions, and now this magnetic RBC Woman of Entrepreneur of Canada award nominee is a much sought-after trainer, woman empowerment and motivational conference speaker, sharing proven strategies, sales strategies that will take you and your team's performance from stalled to unstoppable. Tips for women to overcome the confidence gap and imposter syndrome so that they can be more successful in navigating those careers upward. And she shares her near-death scuba diving incident and how the experience and lessons that she has learned that day will help you move forward and live a better life. Author of the Badass Guide to Superstar Selling, Jackie's superpower is helping you take your sales from stalled to unstoppable while being more, just hang on a second.
A long one.
While being more confident, successful in business and in life. Please welcome Jackie Rainforth to the Millionaire Woman Show. So glad you're here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. This is great. Thank you, Debra.
Wow. You know, our paths crossed, and, you know, I've been watching you on social media. Your sales, I would like to call it, you have this presence that really captures people and draws them in. And when I was looking at the title of your book, it was like badass and superstar. Two very powerful words. And I'm like, I got to talk to this woman. Many people need to hear this woman.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for coming on.
Well, thanks. Yeah, the title of the book was a little controversial. People are like, oh, I don't know if you should be using the word badass. And, you know, in a corporate forum, I don't know if that's acceptable. And finally, my publisher said, you know what? It's all good. It's good, you know.
Yeah.
All publicity is good.
You know what? I personally think, you know, it might not be part of the C-suite language. However, I think internally, I think all of us want to think that we have this little edginess, that uniqueness. And that's, you know, when I think of badass, I think it's an edgy thing to have. And it's being willing to do things other people wouldn't do. But I would love to, what is your definition of the badass?
Well, I wrote it in the book. Here's the book, Badass Guide to Superstar Selling. And on page 8, this is what I said. So I looked it up, and there are a lot of definitions for badass, but it is a general term used to describe behavior that is fearless, authentic, compassionate, and ethical. It is well above the standard for normal behavior, exceptional and excellent, stays true to themselves, not being fake to impress others, does not give up, pushing themselves for better, no matter how hard it gets. And I think, you know, when we look at people in life, those who are courageous, those who are willing to be badass, those are the people that really rise to the top. So I think that's always been my inspiration. It's kind of like Beyonce being fierce, right? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, when you say Beyonce, every time I think of her, I think of the song "I Was Here."
Oh.
It's just like you put yourself in this place and you show up. You show up as this badass, also known as high achiever,
Yes.
But what I also heard when you were describing that is Napoleon Hill's desire backed by faith, where
Oh,
you're being true to yourself, you're being fearless, you're being authentic, you're being all those things.
right.
But a badass truly has a desire and vision and mission of what they're going after, but it's totally backed by faith that they know what they're doing.
Well, I think, yeah, it's important to just have that belief behind you in whatever you do, whether it's setting your goals, whether, because there are days, hey, let's face it, being an entrepreneur, being in sales, it's up and down. It is not a straight journey from A to B. And it can be really, there are days where it's really tough. And so I think it's nice to always have that belief behind you.
Yeah, definitely a roller coaster. I think, entrepreneurs, we face so many different of those highs and lows that you talk about. When those victories, they're high, they're high.
They
And
are,
when they're low, they can be low. We want to make sure that the valleys don't go too deep.
yes,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, so we don't go there. So I want to know, what's your why? Like, you have this near-death scuba experience,
Yeah, yeah.
and your why, being an entrepreneur, what pulls you up when you're in the valley?
Well, what happened with the scuba diving incident was that I went out, my husband's a scuba dive before, and I thought, well, I can do this. It's easy, right? And I did all the steps, but when we went out for the deep dive, it wasn't that deep. It was 45 feet for those people who scuba dive. But me being a newbie, 45 feet was a big dive. And down we went. I had all the gear on. Someone said, hey, Jack, let me, he had an underwater camera, took my picture. I thought, oh yeah, I want to remember this moment. What I didn't realize is that him and my husband turned around and started to swim off. When I turned to go, I couldn't breathe. And I was terrified. But that whole training comes back to you and you think, oh, okay, I can do this, right? Because I'm badass. I can handle this on my own.
Yeah.
I tried to blow up the regulator like they teach you to, and of course it didn't work. I tried a couple times, but I could feel my lungs filling. I ended up crossing over and seeing the light, but I got a message that day, and the message was, Jackie, you haven't been listening to the signs and signals. You've been blessed with many gifts and talents. You need to get out there and help people feel more confident, successful in business and in life. You have a new path ahead. I ended up, long story, but I spent 3 days in critical condition. But I thought about that message, and all the success that I had had selling previous to that really became hollow. And that became my why. It's the motivation, it's my driver for helping other people, for helping people be more successful and confident in selling and in life, whether it's the women empowerment speaking, whether it's sales, whether it's business, it doesn't matter. It's just,
Right.
it's my why. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think people need to realize when they have that sense of why, that they really need to own it. They really need to believe that that is truly their mission, like with conviction.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm helping some clients currently that I'm doing succession training and leadership and business development with clients as, the sons are taking over the business. And I said, one of the first things I said is, what is your why? And we delved deep into it. Why are you doing this? Because there are days when you're not going to want to continue. There are days when you're going to want to throw in the towel. There are days where you're like, I can't do this. I can't handle one more day, because that's what life as an entrepreneur is about. And I said, that why, on those days, you remember back to your why, because it's the why that's going to pull you through and get you to the next day.
Yeah. And when I think about what you've shared with them, it's kind of like that onion. Let's continue to dig deeper and deeper. I laugh thinking about it, but I remember my dad years ago. He had quit farming and he'd gone into chemical technology, and he was at his first ever job interview.
Oh.
And he was talking about the interview. They would ask him a question and they'd say, why? And then he'd answer and they'd say, why? And then he'd answer and they did it again. And he's like, look, I don't even know what else you need. There's no more I can give you, right? But that's the point that we need to get to, that it's so embedded. And sometimes I think we can't often for some people can't articulate it. It's just a deep knowing that
Yeah.
this is that mission. And I
Yeah.
think I had goosebumps, hearing you share that this message came to you, and what a gift that is, because there's so many people looking for clarity of that why. So
Mhm.
when you were working with them, what did you do to help them get clarity on what that why was?
Well, it's just about digging down. It really is. And people do know what their why is eventually, but it's about asking the right questions and really, kind of pushing that emotional boundary to really find, it's almost asking those difficult questions and really pushing on. You can see when people, pull back or move forward in what they're revealing to you.
Mhm.
And so sometimes it's just asking those tough questions, but they were great. They were great. They
Yeah.
knew what their why was, and we zeroed in on it pretty quick.
That's
But
awesome. That's
yeah.
awesome. And what a driver that is, for to people have clarity on what that why is. I know for myself, it took a signature presence article that I had to do when I was taking my coach training.
Mhm.
And it came back from an event that happened when I was 8 years old. And
Wow.
it was really about understanding that I'm here to share my gifts, and my job in the world is to make sure every single person is sharing theirs
Wow.
fully. Because I was told that now was not the time to share my gift. And I
Really?
had buried that message for years. And that's why I think it's so important that people stand up and this is my why, this is my why,
Mhm.
and really dig into how important that is in driving, whether it be their life. For some people, their clarity is that they want to be the best teacher,
Right.
and making sure that children all get taught and know that they're loved and valued and appreciated. Another person, it might be that they're a baker, so that
Mm.
people are having, fabulous food. So I want everybody listening to understand that you're not going to have necessarily the same why
No.
from
No.
person to person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now that you have that as a driving force in your life, do you have something like in your office or something as a reminder to remind you each day of what that why is?
Yeah. Do you remember I told you I had a picture taken just before this all happened?
Yeah.
That picture is my screensaver. So every
Awesome.
day, multiple times a day, I can be
Yeah.
looking at that photo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
it,
and how important do you think it is for people to have, whether it's a why or positive messaging around them in their environment?
it's everything because mindset drives action. And if we've got a positive mindset, that's what's going to keep us going and moving in the right direction. If we are, depressed, sad, glum, not positive, negative Nelly, that's where you're going to go. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Just before we came on today, my my daughter was having this discussion with us about having a realistic mindset. And and I said, and how does that serve you? So we were having this discussion. So I love how it does drive action.
It does.
Mindset is everything, and the power to understand some of those messaging and have those reminders, whether it be affirmations or quotes and pictures. Especially that picture is a reminder that this is my mission.
Yeah. When I owned my own company, I used to keep a ship in a glass bottle on my desk, like just above my desk.
Yeah.
And I will never forget it because it reminded me that as a leader, you need to lead. It's just like the pirates on the big ship. If you don't lead, you're going to have a mutiny on board. And so I'm big into all of that stuff. Those little reminders
Yeah.
everywhere, and yeah, just all of those things. I'm a huge believer in all that stuff.
Yeah. And it's fascinating. I love talking to women about their offices, because I know one of the coaching clients I've worked with, we talked about the impact of the environment
Hmm.
in, and not only who you surround yourself with, but the environment you create for yourself. Is it conducive to making you feel successful?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, what has been your experience, even in the places that you've worked and shared?
Well, I know for me, if I have chaos or if I'm not organized, it's not good for me. I need light. I know that's a big driver for me. I mean, some people have different, different beliefs.
Yeah.
I like those little reminders everywhere. I like having things close at hand, ready to go. I mean, I don't know, and I like a nice space. So like I have a home office and I made my husband wallpaper it for me in beautiful wallpaper, and I've got a beautiful mirror up, and because it's my space. I have a vision board. Those are my things that have meaning to me.
Right.
And every woman should have a little bit of them everywhere.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And when
Yeah,
you're able to create that space, it's like creating that Zen place where you're not only safe, I don't know if it's the word safe, but you're free to be creative, free to
abs-
have that innovation, right?
yeah, yeah. Especially if you've had a good sleep the night before.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And those entrepreneurs, they have those long hours.
Monkey brain in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah, and have that paper at the bedside so
Yeah,
that you don't
yeah,
miss a beat.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So let's jump into a little bit of the superstar selling. So I know that, new entrepreneurs, seasoned entrepreneurs, even, when people think of selling, I think often the first thing that comes to mind is phone calls, the
Uh,
cold calls particularly, and it makes them nervous and might, oh, let me go work on marketing instead, or doing some social media design. And those sales calls are so important, or those sales emails. Which are you finding more popular? Is it still the calls, or is it reaching out by email? And how can they make themselves a little bit more comfortable?
Well, there's been a real shift in selling, especially, lead generation. It's moved to, of course, remote selling. We have to learn how to do that. And social selling. I've been getting a ton of interest in my social selling programs because as you saw on LinkedIn, I'm there. I'm posting 3 sales tips a day. I'm doing a weekly video. I'm always engaged and things are happening. And it's the new way of warm calling. When people see you, they recognize you, they recognize your brand, they know that you're staying top of mind with them. When you actually do go to pick up the phone to phone them, they already know you, or they feel like they know you. And so I think setting up warm calling is probably, through social selling is the big thing. And even, with certain campaigns, you can do email campaigns, you can do social media like LinkedIn campaigns. There's lots of different things that you can do. But again, it's even when you do say reach out to people on LinkedIn, the first thing they do is check out your profile to see who you are,
Hmm.
and maybe your website, if you've included your website and you've made it simple for them to find you, right? So the biggest mistake that people make, of course, is they avoid the tasks that they don't want to do or that they don't feel comfortable or confident in. And that is always lead generation, always.
Yeah.
I have a little program, I call it chunk and plunk. You chunk your time and you plunk the activity in, and you just do it. And, because if you don't do it, it never gets done. It never gets done. And I see people, professional salespeople who've been doing it for years, and they'll just go from job to job, hoping that they don't get caught or discovered. I wouldn't say caught, but discovered, because they lack that confidence, or they don't have a system that works for them in terms
Mhm.
of generating new leads. But as entrepreneurs, it's really important, because that's you need that consistent, flow of customers coming in to keep a consistent flow of cash flow.
Yeah.
And,
And that's, common in everything in life. Like, are you going to do things randomly
yeah,
versus consistency?
right. Exactly. It is. And, I tell people about social selling. It is all about consistency. It's, do I always have great things to talk about every week? But I've been doing it for years. Every week I try to get out there and, try and drop a little tip on something in selling. And I think, especially for entrepreneurs, it's the programs, the systems, the processes are important. And people, especially if they're not professional salespeople, if they are entrepreneurs, there's this feeling that selling is sleazy.
Mhm.
But selling, that someone's trying to push you into something. It's those, like you said, those annoying phone calls. But I try to look at it in a different way. One, I make selling simple so that it's quick and easy, step by step. It makes it, I've just simplified it so much. And the other thing that I do is that I give people the confidence so that they don't feel like it's sleazy. And selling isn't. These days, selling is about telling. It's about educating and informing and, trying to create a collaborative relationship that creates a win-win. It's creating a vision. It's so much more than the bad selling that's out there, the bad selling that's out there. And there's lots of it. I mean, who hasn't been to a timeshare
Mhm.
presentation,
Yeah.
right?
And it's really about the relationship because, we see people that they do the transactional relationship and they think, oh, one and done versus the relationship of extending for when the next need occurs.
Yeah. Well, and it's like realtors. How many times have realtors reached out after they've sold you a home? I mean, it's the biggest purchase you'll ever make in your life. Not to say they're all like that. Please don't think I'm generalizing timeshare and realtors. And, I'm not. It's just that, so much of the sale is in the follow-up and in the relationship, like you say, that's built afterwards. 24% of the sale is in the follow-up. And yet sometimes that's
Because
where,
even that connection might be, hey, you know what? I forgot to tell you about somebody who would be interested in your service.
or asking for the referral, or getting a testimonial, keeping in touch, staying top of mind, so the next time they decide to do something, they're going to think of you and go to you. Doing something that's unique and different. I mean, you know there's lots out there that people can do to really kind of rise above their competition.
So for those people watching and listening, like if you're watching us on YouTube, and if you're listening, we're on your favorite podcast player. Um, Jackie, can you just explain for some people that who might be just interested in learning about business or just started a business who might not understand what social selling is,
Okay,
and
sure.
maybe three tips to get started?
Okay, easy. Social selling is engaging on the social media platforms. So if you are in business, LinkedIn is really where you want to be. It is the new cold calling. It really is. Depending on what your business is and where your market is, it could be Facebook, it could be, whatever platform you work with. But there are a few things that you need to do. One, you need to engage. And so often people don't. They're afraid to put themselves out there. They're afraid to write a comment. But if you want to get recognized, if you want your business recognized by somebody, the easiest thing you can do is like or make a comment. And with the algorithms that are out there today, it's about sharing. If you share their post, that's where the person, that actually did the post is going to get the most benefit. But that's number one, I would think, is start engaging, start sharing, liking posts, and commenting on somebody's posts. The second thing that you can do is start posting yourself. So start putting things out there. You can go to canva.com, right, and create all sorts of posts depending on whether it's Instagram or Twitter, or wherever you want to be. There are different sizes, so but once you go there, you can just start putting little things down or putting out photos or talking a little bit about what you do, how you differentiate, anything. Here's the thing though, if you put a photo out there, it gets 2 times as much engagement as just text. So always have a photo attached. Even if you Google it and go to images, get your photo. And video is the new thing. I mean, those millennials, they love video. Everybody loves video, right? You get 5 times as much engagement with video.
So
Really.
what does it take for someone? I know that you have and I have, done video in various formats. But it's that overcoming the fear of being on a Facebook Live.
Oh, huge. Well, and their timelines. So Facebook Live should be typically no more like around a minute, because people aren't asking to go on Facebook Live. You're kind of giving it to them. Something like LinkedIn, you want to stick to like 2 to 4 minutes. 2 minutes is really where you want to be. And when you get onto YouTube, people are purposely going there to see video. So you want to be at least 5 or 6 minutes, if not 15. Like, you want to be, substantial on YouTube. So that's a little tidbit of advice there. I think the one thing that really changed it for me in terms of getting out there was to know that it's, as a dear friend of mine said, Karen, she said, it's not about perfection, it's about connection. And people want to see it. I'll be doing a video and then I'll go, oh, blah, 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 oh, back up, or back the bus up, or, all those quirky little things, that's what people love. And it's not about perfection. They really want to get to know you and what's important. Who are you? What are you all about? What is your company about? And they want to know that you're not perfect. We're tired of advertisement and marketing that just shows this ideal perfectness, and people don't trust it anymore. We've got the lowest societal trust levels in the history of the world. Too many things have happened, and selling, people just don't trust anymore. So they want to see imperfection.
Yeah.
Really.
And that makes you relevant, right? And relatable.
It
Those
does.
are the big things, because when people see, you know what, she's just like me. It's
Yeah.
it's okay,
Yeah, it's true. And, there's always going to be those people that, the haters, or the people that don't say the nice things. Although I have to tell you, I've been doing this for years now, and I have only had two negative comments where, and even then it was nothing. Like I just reached out privately and said, hey, just so you know, and typically if it is a bad response, you don't want to even engage, because there are some people that want you to,
they're fishing for a fight.
they're fishing for a fight. Yes, exactly. But I've been really, really blessed, really lucky. Maybe it's the forum. I don't know. Maybe it's just me being goofy. I'm not sure, but I've been very blessed that way.
Yeah. And I think people, they get so worried about who's watching, how am I going to get judged? And I want to share that, there's going to be judgment no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
But be yourself, because the person that you're wanting to attract, the person who you need to resonate with, is the one who's going to notice.
Yes. And yeah, that whole thing about judgment. There are still days where I hit send and go, oh, here we go, right? I hope this is okay. But you have to understand that, you need to be confident in the fact that you are the expert at what you're doing. You do know more than the average bear. And you know what? You're being courageous and badass for putting it out there, because I believe leadership is all about courage. It's the courage to speak up. It's the courage to do things that other people won't do. And I have that little saying for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs do what most people won't, so they can live life like most people don't. And, it's about courage. And when you put yourself out there, when you put out a video or say something or do something, just remember you're being a lot more brave than the other people. So
I find that so important, that people realize that entrepreneurs will do what other people will not do. And those who are badass are willing to do what other people won't do, because of the why.
Yeah.
Because of how important it is. And they know the difference it's going to make in the world. And if they hold back, we don't have that influence in the world. And when you look at all the businesses that have ever started, they're all entrepreneurial. We need everybody's position. I know I've talked to people, well, I only work at the makeup counter. You're important. I'm the janitor. You're important. Imagine if you weren't there.
Yeah. Makeup they say that makeup, it will be the last thing that people give up if the world should ever come to an end.
I believe that.
Yes, makeup's very important.
So Jackie, what is one of the biggest sales objections that you have heard that people face?
Oh, there are lots of objections. There's so many. It's hard to say which one's the biggest. I guess price is the biggest one.
Yeah.
And I always, there's a purchasing process to selling. One of the things I always tell people, listen, the first thing, if you've got a product, the first thing I'm going to say to you as a customer is how much. And you have to prove value before you talk price. And you could easily just say, hey, listen, I need to ask you more questions to find out a little bit more about what you're looking for, because I've got lots of options. I want to make sure we find the right fit for you. Or you could say, you know what, would you mind if I take a minute to tell you a little bit more about, you know, the things that we provide that'll really, you know, either improve your life or save you money or improve your efficiency, save you time, all of those things that are important to people before you get into price. Because if you put your price out there, they're going to say yes or no. In their minds, in 2 seconds flat, they're going to determine whether that's right for them or not. But if they don't know the value that you're giving, if they don't know all of the stuff that you're providing, you're losing the sale for no reason.
Yeah.
Right?
Because it comes down to the need, the true need, and what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually you want them to actually have the true need of what they're really looking for, that whole experience of whatever they're purchasing.
Right. Well, and selling is just, it's providing solutions. That's what it is. Sometimes people don't recognize that they need it, or, you know, that there is a gap in their world, whatever that might be. But I also truly believe that things come to you when it's supposed to come to you. And so, you know.
And when you come from a place of curiosity, you learn so much more, and what they were looking at might not have the vision of what they could, because they're making a decision based on what they know, not where they're going necessarily, right?
Right. Well, and it's little things. It's like when you go out for dinner and asking, well, what's the most popular, you know, item on the menu, right? When they ask you what you want, you ask them back. You learn so much from what they say. And it's just asking one simple question, right?
Yeah.
What do you recommend and why? You know, they'll tell you why they recommend it. And it's great. I've had the best dinners, the best wines. The word of mouth is everything today in selling. It really is. And I think people trust what other people say. So it is something as simple as asking, well, what do you recommend of a server? You know, they know that's their area of expertise. They'll tell you, they'll steer you in the right direction.
Yeah.
For sure. So,
yeah. I don't know how many times I've learned this from my friend Kelly, that now I'll go to a restaurant, and if I'm really stuck on 2 items, I'll say, choose your favorite out of the 2.
yeah.
And I really get excited about seeing which one they're going to bring me.
Oh,
Because I would have been good with either, but I do it for the game of seeing what they would come back with.
right, right. Well, and that's a risk taker. You're a little badass. You do know that, right?
A little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah. But again, some people aren't comfortable with risk, right? And oftentimes we hold back. It's the same thing about engaging on social media or putting a comment out there. It's the same thing. We all have different levels of comfort zone.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
And I have to ask you, I recently read this, that this one sales approach that I had read about was, someone was saying, you know, they were talking about the cost of investment. And the person said, you are making a decision on base your past experiences and your current place of where you are now. You are not looking at where you're heading and what your decisions will be moving forward.
Right.
And after this gentleman caught himself, he's like, yeah, because we're making judgments based on our previous sales approaches from people coming. We're looking at something maybe we recently purchased, whether that transaction went well or not, or it was an interaction versus transaction.
Yep.
So I was very surprised to, like, when I was reading this in print, that you are making decisions based on your current situation, not on what that product or service will give you in the future with having that knowledge or that training that you've had. Right.
And that's why goal setting is so important, right? You need to be setting your goals monthly, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, because when you're presented with things, you think about it in terms of fitting into your goals and where you want to be in those timeframes. I can't say enough about goal setting. A girlfriend of mine, Michelle, she said, here, put it this way. If your goal is to make it to Friday and the weekend, I can tell you, you're probably broke. If your goal, if you're writing out your goal, you're looking at 100 grand. If you're looking at a 2-year goal, you're looking at 200 grand, right? And that type of thing. And I can tell you, I've met some people that are absolute They're fierce when it comes to keeping goals and writing out their goals, and super, super, super successful. People who write out their goals are 10 times more successful in terms of financial gain than people who don't.
And they're less likely to be distracted. Like,
Oh,
there's squirrels and bright, shiny objects all around us all the time. But when people are focused and I like how you say chunk and plunk. I always tell people move your to-do list into your calendar, because otherwise it stays on the list and your calendar's blank thinking you have all this free time in the world, and your
right.
email dictate what you're doing today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Leads for disaster.
Well, it's funny because I believe that, there are certain times that you should be picking up the phone and calling people. And I have a little jar with gold money in it, like gold chocolate money, but it's covered in gold. And I'll give those to clients as well. And I say, okay, here's the thing. You put that little jar in front of your computer, and until you've made those calls, you can't move that little jar. Once those calls are made, you can move it. And at the end of the day, you put that jar back in front of your computer so that, you make sure that you're chunking out that time, because if you don't, you're simply not going to have the income coming in, right?
Yeah. So do they have to put in, like, is it an empty jar and then they have to put the coins in?
No, I put the coins in them to remind them that they need to make the calls to make money.
Nice.
Yeah.
That visual reminder again, right? Yeah. To have that visual in front of you that, if you want money, it's right here, but if you don't make the calls, you don't get it.
Well, and it's even, your business plan or your goal sheet, all of that should be plunked right in front of you and, on your boards. You're seeing it every day to remind you that those are the goals, so that when someone does come and present something to you, you're not thinking about it from the space that you're in today. You're thinking about, how is this fitting into my future? Which, right, is a completely different, and is this money that I'm going to invest in this course or system or whatever it was that they were selling, is that going to give me a return on investment as I move towards my future?
Right. That's lots here to think about for those who are listening and thinking about their sales. But really, when it comes down to goal setting, I think people can sometimes be scared to write down their goals. And I tell them, when you write down your goal, it's out of your head. You actually make something tangible.
Right. Well, and it's funny, when I signed the book with dream big, push through fear, and be badass in all that you do. Because we don't dream big enough. It's interesting, from salespeople are often given a goal every year. If you're a professional salesperson working in the corporate world, and typically it's a 10% increase. But companies will always give a stretch goal, and that could be 15, 20, 25, whatever it is. Every time, it's statistically proven that when you have a stretch goal, you will achieve it. And that's why it's so important to dream big, because we don't dream big enough for ourselves. We don't set big, lofty goals for ourselves. We don't take that risk. We're fearful. And, they say you can be fearful of success. And I think it's true, but we do have to push through the fear that we have that holds us back from all of the things that we know we could be doing, that we should be doing, that could get us to that big, big goal.
Yeah. I often think when people are able to reflect, they know exactly what is needed to be done, right? They have this gap between knowing and doing. And it really comes down to, okay, what is it going to take for me to move from knowing what I need to do to doing what I need to do? And sometimes that could be sales training, could be coaching, could be some self-reflection to say, okay, what's working, what's not working for me.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to, how bad do you want that money in the jar, right?
Exactly.
And making things happen.
And, I find all the time, from a corporate point of view, not from an entrepreneurial point of view, but from a corporate point of view, oftentimes the sales leader says, okay, team, you're going in for sales training. And there's always at least one or two people with their arms crossed and their rolling eyes, and that they don't want to be there. There's always a group of people, you can teach them everything, you lead them to water, but they're not going to drink. And then there's always those people that do the little extra, that will work really hard because they know what their goal is, they know what their why is, they know what they want to do, and they'll take action. They'll just do it. So, yeah.
Where do you think that resistance is coming from often?
Oh, huh. um, sometimes from ego. People think that they know everything and they don't need anything, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes from lack of confidence, because that often shows up as ego.
Right.
Uh, I think some of it comes from past experience, maybe childhood things, right? I think there's so much to be said for all that childhood stuff.
Yeah.
We interpret things as children that follow us and hold us back throughout our whole lives. So, you know, if someone said, "Oh, you can't," and I know what else. Those, we all have those little voices in the back of our head. We all have tapes that we say to ourselves that we don't realize everybody else has. And those tapes are, "I'm not good enough. I don't belong. I can't do this." Those tapes hold us back all the time, but we all have the same tape. So I don't get it. I guess that's why I tell people that you need to recognize it. We're all the same. We all think we're,
And I think I just laugh when you say that, because I think people forget that everyone has this tape playing of all these self-limiting beliefs that they've told themselves. And
right.
I find, and the reason I brought it up is I find resistance so telling. There's so much we can learn from that resistance.
Yes.
That when we can tap into the resistance and show how that uniqueness in your, badassery can help you become a better sales person.
Well, and that's what you specialize in, right? Is pushing people and through those processes, those internal processes, to see the other side. And I think it's true. It is about resistance, and we do resist. We will always resist. But the thing is, when we push through that fear, we do find tremendous success. And if you stay in the comfort zone, that's all you're going to achieve is where you are. You're not going to have that success that comes after pushing through that resistance.
So Jackie, would you share with us one of the greatest fears or resistances that you've pushed through personally?
Oh, man, there's been so many. Well, let's see. When I first started off in sales, I was awful. Like, I was really awful, because I was cold calling back in the day, and I had to, knock on doors, and I was selling time clocks, those where you put the card in and it tells, those. So people didn't need those every year, let me tell you. And I got a lot of no's and a lot of rejection and a lot of, doors slammed in my face. And eventually it just ate away at me until I started, well, the worst part was I was on a draw. So the company would give me an income, but I had to sell enough time clocks to make it up, or I owed them money, which is not a good position. I just sank lower and lower and lower. And it got to the point where all I was doing was going in the office, shuffling around some paper, and then go, "Oh, I'm going up to do my sales calls now." And I was going home and I was sitting on the couch watching TV. I was lying to myself. I was lying to my employer. I was compromising my integrity. I was, crippling my values that I believed in. And it just went downhill from there. And I think one of the fears that I had was, I quit my job as a result of that, because I didn't want to be found out. And I had to push through the fear of going back into that pattern again, starting with the new job. And I changed my mindset. And that's why I think mindset's so important, and saying, I can do this. What's the worst that can happen? Oh, they say no, so what? I mean, is that really that bad, right? And I think when I opened up my mindset and I pushed through that fear, that's when the right people came into my life to mentor me, to push me into a different direction. And my world just exploded. I became top performer at every company I ever worked at after that. So yeah, that's probably that was my fear. It was getting off the couch and getting back on the horse again to try and be successful. Because I certainly at that point in time, I would have easily, gone back to anything but selling.
Right.
Anything at that point, anything, yeah.
And I think, there's that imposter syndrome, like you mentioned, the fear of being found out. And I often like to tell people when they say that to me, and I love your take, but I often tell people that, if you're in the practice of, and you are focused on with the intention of serving, and you're giving your best with the knowledge that you have, to me, that's not an imposter.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. I think, I was guilty of it. I felt like I had to have all of the certificates behind me before I was good enough. And I said to someone today, actually, I said, you know what? You have to remember that you are the expert in what you do. Not everybody knows what you know. And you just have to have faith and confidence in yourself that you are good enough as is, and that you do know more than they do. And that in itself is all that matters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating, and I agree with you. And for people listening and watching to really think about, where did that story come from that you needed to have every single credential behind your name or every single certificate? To me, unless you're my surgeon or doctor, that where there's a college of, an association of, where they have to have competency credentialing and all that, really, you're not in a life and death situation most of the time. Are you showing up how you're, again, it comes back to integrity. Are you a person of your word? Are you committed to the end goal?
Yeah. And I think it also comes back to your why. You have to remember why. What is it that's driving you to do this? Because when you're feeling like an imposter, when you're feeling like you're not good enough, and we have to, understand that as women, we've kind of been conditioned this way along, as little girls. Oh,
Yep.
that, stay within your little box. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
exaggerating, but whereas boys are, kind of taught to be a little more assertive, and taught to, get out there and do it, and you can do it, go hit that baseball, you can do it, where we probably don't get as much of that. And that confidence gap, we need to recognize that. And again, that's where you're pushing through the fear, just to know that you are good enough. You are the expert. Just life experience alone gives you, but we need to believe in ourselves as women. We need to, sure, we have more roadblocks. I still believe, I'm sorry for putting that out there, but I think we have more roadblocks and more challenges. They do exist. I think there are biases out there for sure. And, I think we just need to learn how to gain respect and keep pushing forward and take those little risks of whether it's being assertive or speaking up, being courageous, and those little things that we can do that make a difference. And step by step, every day you take a little baby step. Eventually you turn around and go, wow, look what I did. I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
Well, we mentioned in your bio that you do some women empowerment speaking. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that is and why is it important to you?
Oh, it's so important to me. The reason that I do it is because I call it, I grew up in the construction industry. I was one of the first, if not the only female sales rep in the construction industry for years. And believe me, it was, and even as a business owner, there were very few of us as business women, or, women business owners. There are a few things that happen. There are little games that are played. There are little comments that are made. There are little roadblocks that you have to overcome. And I think there's a way, we can't play the woman card. We just can't. That's not the proper way to do it. If you want to really see success in your career and navigate and be more successful, it's really about earning respect. And I try to teach people, how they can earn that respect and still follow their values, their integrity, to be all that, to be badass, to be authentic, to not shy away from certain situations, to have the courage to say things, to speak up. And, I don't know, there's just so many things. It could be little things like, as women, we shouldn't walk into a room with a bunch of bags and a purse and, carry one. You look like you're disorganized. And and what does that, where does that go in someone's mind? Oh, they can't even, look how disorganized they look. And then you think, oh, well, then it leads to, oh, well, they can't be very good at work if they're not organized, and oh, I don't know if I'd want them on my team if that's, little things that can make a tremendous difference in how you're. I had an opera singer once tell me that as women, we need to put on our fierceness on the inside. This is Michelle, she's great. And to walk heel toe as we walk into a room. What it does is it throws our shoulders back. We look and walk more confidently. And that is, people look at that and go, wow, right? Instead of, kind of heel toe and shoulders down, there's physiological things that we can, physical things that we can do to really own who we are.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff. And it's important to me because those roadblocks do exist. There's some young, I'm part of the Canadian Mentorship Network of Canada, and I network, or I mentor young women, and politics, I wish I knew at 20 what I know today about politics in the corporate world. Oh my gosh, right? And so it's important to me to give these young, brilliant minds a step ahead of, avoiding different circumstances or experiences, and giving them that extra boost that they need to really shine.
So what would be one thing you would tell your 20-year-old self?
Trust your gut, trust your intuition, and live your life with courage.
Very, very powerful. Jackie, when we're coming to the end of the interview, I could talk to you all for a number of hours here, but I know we have to wrap things up. I have 2 final questions for you. Actually, probably third. I always have to have one more. What is one book, and making sure you're raising your book here, that has profoundly made a difference in your life that you would highly recommend?
Well, that's easy. Here's my book, The Badass Guide to Superstar Selling.
Awesome. Love it.
There. See, you have to process up. The one book is Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's still one of the top selling books after I think it's been a century.
Yes, it's on the top list.
It is, because getting people to ask questions, when you ask people questions and get them talking about themselves, that's when they like you the most. It's simple stuff, but it's the best advice ever. Dale Carnegie, I wish, brilliant.
And the next question I have for you, which no guest is ever given ahead of time to prepare, is, what does it mean to you to live rich from the inside out?
It's rich from the inside out. It's being true to myself, being authentic, not wearing a mask, setting limits and boundaries for myself, being courageous, being able to speak up and say what I need to say instead of bearing it and keeping it inside. And I think that's the biggest thing, at least for me, living rich from the inside out. It's just being me, the real me, not the me that we put out to the world, not the me that other people want us to hear, or, not putting out the verbiage that, they expect, but just being me.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that definition, Jackie. Thank you so much. And my final, of course, is how can people stay in touch with you? How can they get the book and just soak up a little bit more Jackie?
Oh, well, thanks, Debra. You're great. LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn under Jackie Rainforth, right? Just look me up. I'm there all the time. I probably drive you crazy. But like I said, I do 3 sales tip posts a day and 1 video a week. The other thing you can do is you can go to rainmakersgroup.ca. You can get my book either on Amazon, or if you use the code BADASS, you can get it on the website, rainmakersgroup.ca, and it's under the book page.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jackie, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So many different nuggets with us today.
Oh, good. Well, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. Really fun.
Thank you. And we'll have all those in the link, the show notes here down below. We're going to have links to her social media so you don't miss those little training tips here and there, and get to know Jackie, get a hold of her book. We're going to make sure all of that's here for you. Thank you for joining us on the Millionaire Woman Show. I'd love for you to also go over to my website at www.debrakasowski.com, where right now you can get your 3-part mini course. I'm not sure how long I'm going to keep it up there. I'm going to change things up here soon, where you can develop making habits that stick. So you build focus and consistency in what you're doing to knock those goals out of the park. As you know, Jackie said, setting those goals. So we want to help get those habits in place that are going to help that stick for you. Also, I'd love for you to go over to iTunes, your favorite podcast player, over to YouTube, subscribe, rate, and review so that more people can hear about the Millionaire Woman Show, and share this episode with anyone that you know who needs to push through imposter syndrome, to, you know, get into social selling and interact with others. There's so many huge nuggets that if you just take one thing and implement it, that you know you can have a substantial change in your life, your business, or even in organization. Pay attention to the tips. They can be used in whatever area of your life that you are currently in. So thank you again for joining us. Thanks again to Jackie. Make sure you go out, be courageous, be a badass, and make things happen. As Muhammad Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. And on behalf of Jackie and myself, go out and have a great day.